Good evening, everybody. It's another week. It's another opportunity for us to be alive, and that's absolutely amazing. It's another podcast, and so I'm glad to be here with you. Thank you for taking out your time to come and hang out and share, as you all have been doing these last few weeks. So, do me a favor. If you enjoy the podcast, share it with somebody. Share it on your page, whether you're on Twitter or whether you're on Facebook, and invite people to come and be a part of the conversation. I think we've been having some good conversations. I think I'm getting better at it, and so I'm enjoying this time. As always, I'm not by myself. I have a I'm trying to. I've been trying to think about what this person is to me. I've come up with a few adjectives like my one of my favorite people in the whole wide world, my sister, one of my best friends. Like I couldn't come up with just one name, and so I'll just say my friend. I guess that sums it all up. And for a person like me who doesn't make friends easily and doesn't have a lot of friends, she is my friend. I want to introduce you to Beulah Mcloyd. How are you, B?
Hi, Pat. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for that introduction. You are my friend. That's all encompassing. Friend,
Yeah,
everything. Everything.
yeah.
That's
There's too many descriptives to go
yeah.
into, and all of us think like, oh, so you're my friend. That's what Sylvester said a long time ago in the '70s.
Yeah.
You are my friend.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Thanks for hanging out with me. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well. I'm out here in Cali, enjoying the Cali life now. So I'm having a good time.
Don't rub it in.
No, I won't.
I love Southern California. I absolutely do. So
Yeah.
at least one of us is enjoying some sunshine and wonderful weather, and I can't complain because it's the weather's been great. Comparably, it's been great in DC compared to Chicago,
Yeah.
and so I don't have anything to complain about. And I'm back in Chicago. If you all haven't noticed, I am in Chicago. I am on break. Uh,
Congratulations on making it to break.
making it straight, make it.
Congratulations.
I'll take it. Yeah, I absolutely will take it. Yeah, I made it to the midway point. So I'm good. But thanks for coming and hanging out with me.
Oh,
Um, Before we deep dive in our conversation, I want to talk about biography. I know what you do. I know what um, how I've seen you, navigate your career
yeah.
and motherhood and all the like. But tell us about Beulah.
Yeah, so I've been discovering more and more about Beulah these days, but in
Mhm.
terms of biographical information,
Mhm.
I'm a lifelong student and educator. That's kind of how I describe
We'll
myself.
get into that in a minute. Yeah, we got the
Lifelong student and educator.
right. Yeah.
I've been in education, gosh, for about 20 years now. It doesn't seem
Mhm.
like it's been that long, but it's been that long.
Mhm.
Started out teaching English at Gage Park High School and then became an assistant principal there and did that for about 4 years. And so 14 years of my life I spent in administration as both an assistant principal and the principal.
Mhm.
And now I serve as the executive director of an organization called New Leaders that actually trains principals across the country. My
Mhm.
portfolio specifically is the Midwest region. So we work
Mhm.
with like Chicago Public Schools, East Aurora Public Schools. We did some work downstate in Peoria for a while. And
Mhm.
that honestly has been extremely rewarding because if I can't be a principal, this is probably the only other thing I would want to do, which is train principals and teach people how to do it on a broad scale.
Okay.
Um, I consult as well. My
Mhm.
my passion for education has gotten me into some really great spaces.
Mhm. that you can't talk
that
about.
I can't talk about,
Yeah,
but
the NDA, right? The NDA.
I can't really talk about. But
No.
it's been very rewarding, following my passion and being able to like love what I do and make a living off of loving what I do, and
Hmm.
doing it at a very high level. I'm a mommy, you know that. That's one of my favorite
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
to say. I'm a mom of one 18-year-old beautiful, amazing daughter. Uh,
Yeah.
which to me, if you would ask me what's your greatest accomplishment, probably it would not probably it would be that more than anything. So yeah,
Yeah, that's a lot. Um,
it's a lot.
I'm interested, and I probably know this and probably forgot it. When you were at Gage Park, you taught English comp or English literature?
Both.
Okay.
I taught
Okay.
both. So
Okay.
I taught everything from like world lit, because I was the teacher for 4 years, right? So I had
Hmm.
AP language, I had
Hmm.
AP lit,
Hmm.
but I also had like world literature, intro to English. I had a lot. I had a lot of different sections of things, that I taught. So,
So we're probably going to be just two nerds having a conversation in
and this
public
is this is
right
what
now.
this is
Yeah.
why we're friends. One of the reasons why we're friends.
Yeah, one of them. Yes, absolutely. So literature. What is your favorite piece of writing?
Ah, great question. Literature, favorite piece of writing.
Mm.
I want to say Sula. I
Okay.
love anything Toni Morrison. Anything Toni Morrison. Um,
Hmm.
and she could be polarizing, I think, for some because of the graphic nature of some of the novels.
Hmm.
But I love how she explores issues with women explore issues with Black women before it was
Hmm.
in vogue, right? Issues of
Howard Alum. I
issues,
had to just throw that.
right.
Hmm. Throw
Issues of
that in real quick. Yeah.
sexuality, everything that was taboo, sort of taboo to talk
Yeah.
about. She was
Yeah.
kind of broaching some of those conversations pretty early. So anything, Tony. What about you? I know this is not.
No, yeah, I have so many. Yeah, I have so many pieces of writing that I love. Um, but since you brought up Morrison, I was gifted the complete works of Morrison and some uncollected, unpublished stuff. And
Okay.
in it is the eulogy she gave at James Baldwin's funeral mass.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm sure. I know it was beautiful.
When she talks about how he spoke to her in her language
Mm,
and how he knew I needed you and your language and your worldview, and it was one of the most beautiful pieces.
yeah.
Along with the other stuff, of course, is great, but that how
Yeah.
she described love and how she talked about him, and I think there's a line in there that says, "You knew how to love me, and you knew I needed your love." Like it was.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
That's
no, 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 it's great. I think you can find it if you Google it. You may be able to find it, but to have it and to read it is like
But that makes sense, right? Because you love Baldwin too. So it makes sense to me that
absolutely,
that
yeah, yeah,
your
yeah,
favorite,
yeah,
like, right pieces of writing.
yeah, and,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I've been fascinated, kind of entranced, and now I'm like knee deep in Baldwin and Mills and a whole bunch of other people. So yeah, those they kind of live with me right now and kind of alive. And so so yeah, Morrison is yeah, absolutely amazing. I want to talk a little bit about, you were born and raised in Chicago,
Yep.
South Side,
Southside, Inglewood's finest.
Inglewood.
Inglewood's finest.
Absolutely. What was it like growing up, as a black girl on the South Side of Chicago?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question.
Mhm.
The Inglewood that people see now it wasn't really the Inglewood I grew up in, right? And
Mhm.
maybe it was, but you just see things differently when you're a child.
Sure,
Like,
sure, for
so
sure.
my mom, you know this, my mom was a public school teacher. So
Mhm.
I never realized that she put me through private school. She put Jack, my brother, through private school. And now just knowing how much teachers made back then,
Mhm.
my mom was working poor. I mean, honestly, she was working
Right,
poor because in the 80s,
right.
like teachers were not making very much money. And so we lived in this two flat building. My grandma and my grandfather lived on the first floor. And then we lived on the second floor, and it was really like a family house
Mhm.
because at any given point in time, with your grandparents, back then it was like if people needed a place to be, that's where they would come, the matriarch
Right,
and patriarch of the family.
right.
So I remember growing up both in my immediate household and in the neighborhood with just a strong sense of community and love. Like I remember being able to play outside, jump double dutch in front of the house, like
Mhm.
skating up and down the block on Honorary because I grew up on 57th and Honorary.
Mhm.
um Going to Hermitage Park, being able to play, everybody knew each other. So there was just this strong sense of, even though people were you had working poor and you had middle class, right? Middle class. So a block full of homes and two flats.
Mhm.
Everybody knew each other. It was there was a strong sense of community. You know how segregated Chicago is. So like this sense of blackness and that being something that's unique, that didn't really hit me till like I went to high school, because I went to high school on like the northwest side.
Mhm.
First to Cathedral downtown,
Mhm.
and then Holy Trinity, which was like black and Latino, so like black, Mexican, and Puerto Rican. Those were the three major groups. And I remember there being some tension sometimes there. And that was
Mhm.
just the first time that I really understood that like blackness, as it were, could have
Mhm.
different implications, like based on what part of town you were in. Um,
Mhm.
my mom always exposed us to different things. So we were in the neighborhood, but like I had a car when I was like 16. You remember this because we were
Mhm.
driving everywhere. Church was a big part
Right,
of
right.
our upbringing. So
Mhm.
I think I
Yeah.
was at church more than anything. And so a lot of the social activities were sort of steeped or built around those sorts of my church friends.
Yeah, yeah. So let's do this because we got to have the church conversation.
Yes.
Uh, but
Yes.
but I'm interested
Yeah.
in how where do we get our first ideas about love, right? And who
Mm,
defines that for us? And what does that look
yeah.
like? And how do you understand that? And when did you understand that for yourself?
Yeah. So I think this is interesting because it goes back to the church conversation for me.
Hmm.
Because my mom and dad were separated. So
Hmm.
I will say, like when I was younger, my first concept of love was from my father before he passed, because he passed when I was like 13 years old. I'll never
Hmm.
forget being in church one time because my granddad was a pastor. This church
Hmm.
on like Racine, like 57th and Racine, was called New Golden
Hmm.
Leaf. And this is back in the days when they had like the teas and the banquets and all of that. You remember teas and the banquets. So if there was a tea, we were having a tea at the
Right,
church.
right.
And um, I guess someone had come to the door and was like asking for money and stuff like that. And this is a very interesting dynamic about church, right? Because you're thinking church, we're supposed to be helpful. And they like shun the guy away. It's a very interesting
Hmm.
dynamic. The guy
Hmm.
comes back, he busts out the window. Now, mind you, we at the point in time, we don't know if it's gunshots, we don't know what it is. My
Hmm.
father is sitting next to me. I remember it very vividly. He's sitting next to me, and because we're sitting on like the piano stool, because my mom plays piano, and he pushes my head down, and he's upset. He's like, somebody that's scared. Now my dad's in church. Somebody that's scared my MF and baby. I need to get my pistol in the church, Pat. This is in church. It's just going off. Now, somebody has baby.
Yeah, he was
He needs
right.
he needs
He
to get
was,
his pistol. This is not right. He can't have his baby scared out here. What is that?
right, right,
So
right.
I remember always feeling protected and
Mhm,
loved, and you know always feeling like I was really important and I mattered. And so when he died, I would say my brother sort of like stepped into that, because Jack is 9 years older than me, so he was like big brother slash almost like my father figure. And then I had my
mhm,
grandfather, so I grew up in a family full of like men. And
mhm,
they were always really, really, really protective, and I always felt like I was loved. My mom loved more through like making sure we had everything we needed. Like when I grew older, I had to kind of understand what was happening, right? She wasn't the super affectionate mom, but she was like, I'm gonna get on this bus every day and take it to the west side and teach so my kids can go to private school.
mhm,
And I see some of that in myself. Like even now, the way I deal with Asia, the way I deal with my
mhm,
baby, it's like I show up for her. Like when she needs me, I show up for her. So
mhm,
those are the earliest moments. And then when I became a teenager, I think the church really shaped a lot of like my teenage ideas of love. Hence is why I
mhm.
ended up engaged at 17. That probably wasn't the best thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll get to it. Yeah, no, no, I totally, yeah,
because
there's been a
then
lot
it
of
was
stuff going on during that
it was like it was better to marry than to burn, and it was like all these pairings are happening in the church. We're just
time.
all
Mhm,
being
mhm,
coupled up.
yeah.
So it's growing up and seeing like pastors and how they engage with their wives, hearing their teachings about like how a man is supposed to treat a woman, how a woman's supposed to treat a man. Some of that came into play. But I
Mhm,
will tell you, once I became a parent,
mhm,
I felt like I really understood unconditional love,
mhm, mhm,
because in a conversation that we were having offline, even like things like there are ways in which I show up for my daughter unconditionally, and the level of patience that I have, like for im quote unquote imperfections, the growth process, right?
mhm.
Like
Right.
knowing that no matter what she does,
Mhm,
there's absolutely nothing she can do that would make me stop loving her. To
mhm,
me, when you have a child, you understand love at like a completely different level, because you cannot walk away from, I guess you could, but right, if you're a good parent, you have no desire to walk away from your child. So
mhm,
you love them through whatever their process is. Um, and so I'm like, oh, if I were to think about true love and what it looks like to love somebody through growth and love somebody through whatever, it would be
mhm.
that. So it's kind of evolved over time. That's a long answer.
Sure. No,
Uh,
no, no. But
but
I like long answers, so it's fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So so let's take it a step further.
Okay.
Where did you get your language for love? Right? Because
Hmm.
when you say, I knew my father loved me because I felt safe and protected, those aren't words. That's kind of atmosphere. You make me feel safe and
Hmm.
affirmed and valued. And
Hmm.
you can have that and feel that and never give words to it.
Yeah.
Where did you get your linguistics um, to describe love, to tell someone that I love you and that could be as descriptive as you understood it at the moment. Where did you find what did you find your words for love from?
That's a great question. If I were to if I were to really reflect, I think I do show love in a lot of ways through action. And now having just explained to you like all the experiences I had, that's probably why.
Mm-hmm.
Um I love through showing up for people. That's a big deal for me. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
love you, I'm showing up for you. Whenever you need me, I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
Um Describing love, probably again from parenting,
Mm-hmm.
because when you have children or younger, I will just use I statements. One of the things about Asia is that she needs to hear. Like I can do and provide, and her dad and I think we've done a good job of making sure she has experiences or what. But she's a child who needs to hear. Like she needs to hear it verbally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she needs to hear, "I'm very proud of you." And I've had to grow in that way because my mom she wasn't a communicator of love on that level. So it's something that I've had to learn. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess I learned to have the language by the absence thereof and having to kind of figure it out, honestly. Um, Having to figure out, like, I know my daughter needs to hear,
Mm-hmm.
observing that
Mm-hmm.
and saying, okay, B, I know you're doing all of these things, but she needs to hear. So what does that look like?
Right.
Literature is helpful too, because honestly, when you read different concepts of love, like whether it's a Bell Hooks, whether it's a James Baldwin, whether it's a you know Ta-Nehisi Coates, like whatever it is, I think over the years, even if I go back to some old early sort of writings, when you're a reader, you're an avid reader, you get to explore different concepts and language around love
Mhm.
or about
Yeah.
love.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so
Um,
I've been a student.
yeah. And so we'll step off into the whole church thing.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things that attracted me to scripture, and I think really tipped me over into literature, was the very language and linguistics of the text itself.
Mhm.
Right. Some kind of way, one day we were in church and somebody found, we were boys. Somebody found the Song of Solomon.
Mm, mhm.
Like they was like, read this.
Yeah,
So we
right.
were like in church,
Yeah.
and I guess they thought we had really got saved because we were all that had Bibles, whatever. We were all in this. we were all just reading this stuff.
Oh,
And one of the things when I got past the shape of her breast and the nape of her neck and all of those descriptors
right.
Solomon was given, one of the things that I was enchanted with was how he described, and at the time I didn't know that some of it was a dialogue between them. But as I was reading it, he was very descriptive about my love
Mhm,
and the
mhm,
cherished one
mhm.
and um, his describing how he saw her physically and what she meant to him emotionally. I was so and because of course we didn't have all those other funny translations and all this other stuff these new people got. We
Yeah.
had the King James language and
Yes.
that Vulgate, that King's English was
Yeah.
sweeping, it was romantic, and it was beautiful. And it was from there that I found that language all throughout the whole thing, like it's riveted with all these thuses and thous and
Yeah.
therefores, and so for me, early on, that is kind of what I got, and helped me start shaping my ideas and my language
Yeah.
about love. Because I realized this when I got married. I did not know how to talk,
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
you know, um, and talking about love
Mhm.
and communicating that in a way that somebody who needs you to share, I found that very difficult for me. And part of that was I was young.
Mhm.
Right? And
Mhm.
it's as simple as that. Um,
Right.
and then it got very much compounded and conflicted because it was just that situation was what it was. But what I realized about
Right.
myself was that I did
Yeah.
not have the language.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have the language, but you don't have the capacity to employ it,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
know what I feel. I have words for them.
Yeah.
Getting it out of my mouth,
It's something different. It's a
that's a
whole
whole
different level.
exercise, right?
Yeah.
Um, but let's get back to this. So the church. Um, Pause for a minute. I'm trying to think about when we first met, and it's been so long ago. We were children.
It was at Sweet Holy, I think. I think it was because I think it was before we moved to New Life. I want to say it was at Sweet Holy.
But see, I wasn't, and that means I was just coming around because I wasn't a member of Sweet Holy till like '99. So
Okay.
that means that I was just coming out, hanging
Yeah.
out with you, Pat,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Michael, and Nash was there, and everybody else. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's when we met. So we had to say
It
this
was
has to
new,
be
and it
what.
had to be New Life, right? It had to be New Life if we
Well,
were
New Life, we knew each other then, but that's what New
a
Life is
long time. It's like it's like I don't even.
94,
Yeah.
93, 94. So we're talking about maybe 90, 91 when we met.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And it was like this circle, right? So it was like all the soul
Yes.
children. It was that whole
Right, right,
soul
right.
children kind of
Yeah, yeah,
crew.
yeah, 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 yeah. And
So
okay. So how did the church help shape who um, who you were then, and what do you think about your church upbringing now?
how did it shape who I was then? Um, it was like it was the primary shaper of my teenage years.
Hmm.
So my social groups were there. I was saved back then. Like I was super saved.
Well, we all were. It was all on the one big loop.
Oh my God. I was like Bible thumping. I
Yeah.
was at
Oh,
every musical.
absolutely. Yeah.
Some of my friends that in high school used to be like, "Can you please just?" Because I was so intense and
Yeah.
like it's so serious. So,
Absolutely. Love the Lord.
listen,
Love
say
Jesus.
sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. Okay, speaking in tongues, laying on hands.
All of that. All of it.
Listen.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yep. 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 Yep.
so it was a positive and a negative. I'll say so.
Mhm.
It shielded me from a lot. Uh,
Mhm.
it prevented me from getting into a lot of trouble. But what it meant was just that when I got older, a lot of the things that I needed to probably be learning about as a teenager and
Mhm.
navigating,
Yeah.
I it was sort of like I had to navigate it in my 20s, right?
Mhm.
Because I didn't have a very practical understanding of how to love and be loved and exist, right? In a healthy way with realistic expectations around what that looks like.
Right.
So it was good because those friends that I had from church are still in my life today. And that's like so many years later. And no, I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people can say that they've had
Mhm.
friends for like 30 years. Um,
Right.
but it just meant that like a lot of my high school time, I was isolated from my high school, but like from the high school kids because I was always in church or I was doing whatever with church. Um, that's very interesting. I wish I would have had a practical understanding of God back then and religion.
Mhm.
It was more religion than it was God.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that could be isolating, and you turn other people off, who you could potentially build relationships with. Now I have a couple of friends from high school who were just like, yeah, I know you're like a holy roller, but I'm gonna help you with that. Like I'm help you with that.
Yeah.
um and then there was some trauma around church. Did we talk about church trauma? I'm like,
No, we're here to do that. Let's. We're here. This is what it's for.
like church trauma. Like I was
Mhm.
I was engaged at 17 years old, um, which never should have been. That shouldn't have been a thing. Like being engaged at 17 just shouldn't have been a thing because I was like, it's better marry than burn, sort of thing, and prophesying that this is going to be my husband, and so things like that. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, no, like that's not really practical because you don't even know who you are at 17 years old. So you definitely shouldn't be trying to get married at 17.
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. You
No,
could
no,
tell
no,
me.
no. It's fine. No, 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 no. Church for us was a complicated space.
Yeah.
Un,
Yeah.
unbeknownst to us then, like we didn't know how
Right.
complicated it was. This was our life, right? And
Right.
so between
Right.
church, school, choir rehearsal, eating, like
Bible
it was,
study.
it was just all that. And you're right, right? By definition, it sanctified us, which means it kept us out of a lot of stuff.
Right.
We weren't exposed to a lot, and I know for my parents, and probably for your parents too, was that they understood that we had community there.
Right.
We're not running the street. Like you
Right.
said, we had somebody's musicals, somebody's
Right.
podcast, we had choir rehearsal, we had Bible study. This was just our life. And I'm interested now looking over my shoulder how they gave us a lot of language about what to do, not to do with our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my issue is that they didn't give us a way to live into our bodies, and
Mm-hmm.
not being conflicted about that.
Right.
But they did not give us a whole lot of language about our hearts and about love, how to communicate that, how do we give that. Um, and so we knew what to do or not to do with our bodies. We did not have that same type of attention on our emotional selves.
Right.
But you're running me into marriage, right? Because there was no alternative for young people in that kind of conservative, and it was a conservative environment. Is either you're single or you're married. You're not courting, you're not dating,
Right.
because that's when the devil gets in. So like you, if you were 17, I mean, I got engaged at 20,
Right.
right? Again, what do I know?
Right. Right. Right.
Kids,
Right.
and you can be sincere and still be sincerely wrong.
Right.
Um, and so I got married at 22. Um, you got married at you were what, 20, 21?
20. So after the engagement that did not happen, marriage that did not happen, right? I went
Uh-huh.
away. That's when I went to ORU. And
Right,
so I got married right out of college, probably like a year after I got out of college. So I got married when I was like 22 years old.
right,
Still
right.
super early, still super early. But I didn't know. And this goes back to like the church concept, right? I was
Mhm.
still under the it's better to marry than burn act. So
Sure.
there was I think I was probably the person who was like, listen, like if we're really serious about this,
Hmm.
we need to solidify this with marriage. And my ex-husband being a family man who he's a family, grew up in a two-parent household. He honored that. Um,
But let's pause. Hold on. Let's pause real quick
Yeah.
because I think we should be amazed at how much of our lives were enveloped into a specific way of thinking. If we are conservative in our church, and we didn't call it that, but it was looking back on it, it was very conservative ideas. And then we both went to ORU, who horribly and dramatically reinforced
Right.
a whole nother level.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I remember ORU signing the honor code.
Yeah.
That means you
Yeah.
can't
I
do
know
you can't
anything.
do anything. And it was all about these ethereal ideas about destiny and partnership. And this is where Oral and Evelyn, that looming, marriage. And
Yeah.
so everybody at ORU was looking to couple up. Like that was just, and if it's only 15 black people there,
Right.
right? The numbers, right? So all the black people know each other,
Right.
and we're all, looking at each other as prospective mates. There was no way from us leaving Chicago in that church environment, jumping over into that other environment. There was no time for us to breathe,
No.
and to live. And like you said, a lot of things that you probably should have experienced or done in your teenage years, you're learning it in your 20s.
Yeah.
Well, I always say I really didn't start living till I was 30,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All the stuff and experiences that I had in my 30s, I probably should have had them in my 20s, but I'm trying to be saved
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. It's like, and even from going to ORU and then being a member of Higher D at the time, like everything was one big sort of
yeah.
like reinforcer. Everything was a reinforcer. So by the time I got out of college, it was like, okay,
There's
I'm
only
supposed
one thing to do,
one
right?
thing. Get
It's just
married.
right, right,
That's it.
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I agree 100%. But even with that, back to your point about the ideas, it wasn't about, even in the marriages, it was more about the behaviors. Like,
Mhm,
oh, wives submit to their husbands.
mhm.
It wasn't about how do you love her, how do you love him. It was about this is the way you behave as a wife.
So you're
Not this is
acting some role with each other. Like
right,
this is what they said I'm supposed to do,
right.
and I'm doing it. But so since we're here, let's pause. Let's pull back for a minute. I'm interested, and I don't know if we ever had this conversation, or if I've ever asked you this before. How do you fall in love?
How do you that's you ask such good questions, Patrick. This is why I knew I would love doing this.
Right.
I'm like, because you ask the best questions. How do you fall in? I think
How
it's
do you fall in love? I'm not saying,
no, you're not you in general, me.
yes.
It's changed for me.
Hmm.
It's 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 evolved. I've evolved in how I fall in love. When I was in my 20s, even maybe like my early 30s, it was all about the emotion of love. Like, how does this person make me feel?
Hmm.
Um, do I get butterflies? Like, it wasn't, I didn't necessarily care about compatibility. Like, it was
Right.
like us against the world.
Mhm.
This person makes me feel protected. If this person sees me, right? They
Mhm.
don't just look at me, but they see me. They're interested in what I think and how I feel. And even if there's misalignment of values, that I'll put that on the back burner because it's the emotion of love. It was more about the emotion, the feeling
Yeah.
initially.
Yeah.
At 43,
Mhm. A little different.
it's a decision at this point. It's more of a decision. It's
Sure.
observing how somebody shows up for me,
Mhm.
analyzing, even in speaking with my therapist, because we all need therapists. Like
Absolutely.
talking about values and how aligned you are
Mm.
values wise,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the values are what will the alignment of values are what will help to maintain the relationship, even if the feeling, the emotion of it is not there.
Yeah. Do you need
So
the feeling of it now at all?
I do, I
Okay.
do.
Okay.
But I think it's a 50-50 thing now. Like
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
my head and my heart combined, where before it
Mhm.
was just my heart. It was just like, what's happening here? How do I
Yeah.
feel? Now it's like, how do I feel coupled with what logically, if we're
Mhm.
not aligned from a morals and values perspective, like this probably won't, I can't like make the decision to use Bell Hook's definition of love, be committed to your spiritual
Yeah.
growth,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? I
Yeah. I
can't
love
make that
that.
decision if I'm
Mhm.
clairvoyant and I know that all of these other things are not aligned. So at 43, it's a decision. It's a decision to love somebody and be committed to their growth in every
Mhm.
way imaginable. And that's now the definition. So going back to like how do I learn about love? You know, writers have informed me a lot because once I got the language from Bell Hooks around like what love really is, I
Yeah.
gotta say it really sort of transformed even how I go into relationships and think about things.
God bless bell hooks.
God bless Bell
God bless.
Hooks. I love, 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 love it. Yeah,
So you got married. You fell in love.
I did.
You got married. Um, did you like being married?
I loved being married.
Hmm.
I would get married again. God willing, I'll get married again one day.
Hmm.
I liked being a wife. I
Hmm.
liked having a family unit.
Hmm.
Um, you know, but again, like for me, I didn't understand it because I loved my ex-husband. We weren't compatible though, right? Like there were certain ways that he viewed the world, and he's a great guy, like super great guy. Has been a phenomenal father, and the gift that I got in my daughter from that situation would not trade it from the world for the world.
Hmm.
But I think that was one of the reasons why now I'm like I have to go head and heart and not just heart.
Right.
Because although I loved being a wife, it was tough too when you're not aligned from a values perspective. And then
Mhm.
you end up arguing about things that if you were aligned from a values perspective, you wouldn't even be arguing about.
So and I've been thinking about this question all week. So thank you for bringing this up. Um, how did you experience conflict in your marriage?
Yeah.
No, for me, it's a very dramatic environment. It was, yeah, and then we were two emotional 20-something year olds,
Yeah.
probably spoiled and stubborn in a lot of ways, and just would not is not successful being married. But I realize now I did not know how to have an argument in not to talk about whatever issue it is, although we were horrible at that. Is that I didn't know how to love you and still have conflict with you.
Right.
Like, you have at that age, it was like, oh, we're arguing about this. We've said a lot of words. We haven't fixed it. I'm gonna leave you alone. Like I
Right.
can't. Like I'm
Right.
gonna move away. Right. And then you do that so many times, you stay away.
Yeah.
And you can be there in the same space, but you're emotionally distant and you're on in two different spaces
Yeah.
or whatever. How did you, because in love you're going to have conflict. There are times
Yes.
we're going to have to
Yes.
you have to chop it up,
Yeah.
on the issue. So there's no avoiding that. How did you experience conflict at that age?
Um, so I think because I never saw people have conflict because
Mhm.
like I told you my mom and dad were separated.
Mhm.
I always thought that a conflict was like bad in the end of the world. Like I thought it was like it was everything was fatal. And this is just on my end of it.
Right,
Like
right.
everything was like we're having this conflict. Oh my God, this is like the end. It was everything was I didn't
Yeah.
know. Hey, you could really like have conflict with someone and not it's not the end. It's just the
Mhm.
conflict and people need time to move past it. I'm much better at that now. And I think
Oh, we pros at it now,
yeah,
right?
now 43. And I think just having really good friendships have taught me,
Sure.
right? Like, hey, you can have you have a conflict with your friend, you're still friends. It's not like nobody
Mhm.
leaves. It's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could just sometimes I could be right and how do I want to phrase this? You could be quiet and be right. Like I was vested in him knowing that I was right about this particular thing, which when
Right.
it was more of an ego thing, like more of a pride thing. Like I want
Yeah.
to win this argument.
Right.
And when we argued, we didn't have rules about how we engaged. And so things were said that probably should not have been said, like a lot
Oof.
of hitting below the belt, a lot of right, because there are even ways to argue and you have to have
Healthy ways. They're
yeah,
absolutely healthy ways.
rules of
Uh,
engagement around that.
yeah, yeah. We were horrible to each other. We
Yeah.
said some of the most just things you don't say to people, and you say you love them.
Right.
Right? That's
Right.
just because you're young and you're immature,
Right.
and not realizing that you can be right and still lose at the same time.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
sometimes you have to move your ego out of the way to say I'm willing to lose this because it doesn't matter that much, so we
Mhm,
can win in our relationship, so we can still have each other, right?
mhm.
I didn't know how to negotiate those things within myself,
Yeah.
um, and she didn't either, and so that is what it is. So let me ask you this: when did you know it was over?
That's a good question. So we were arguing a lot, like towards the end, and we went to therapy. We had like couples therapy, and um, it wasn't really helping.
Hmm.
And there are a few things, right? It was a very rational decision for me. Like I was thinking like long term. It was rational, it was a heart decision, but it was also a head decision. Heart wise, I was just exhausted and I didn't feel the way I used to feel. Like I was, did you fall? When did you fall out of love? Like that's a real thing. Like I was emotionally did not have a desire to be intimate. Like I was shut down and I
Hmm.
was numb. And when I get numb, like when I don't even want to fight anymore, that means I'm completely shut down and there's no coming back from that when I go numb.
Yeah.
So I'm not even arguing anymore. I'm just like, I'm done. Um, Head wise, I started to think about the environment I wanted my daughter to grow up in, and
Hmm.
what sorts of messages I wanted her to get about love and relationships. And I did not want her growing up thinking arguing was normal. That when two people are, and when I say arguing, I mean like vitriolic, sort of, not
Right.
just disagree. Like it's
Just
toxic. Right?
surreal.
It's just
Surreal.
toxic. It's just
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
want her. I knew if I stayed in the same house and stayed in the marriage, that the picture that my daughter would have of her father in her mind would not be the picture she has today. Like
Mhm.
the picture she has today is her father is the closest thing to God, right? Like he's caring, he shows up for her, he's protective. I didn't want her seeing us going at it like that because that wouldn't have been her view. Because girls are gonna wonder about like why are you treating my mom this way, or why are you, and it could be either person's, it's both people's interaction, but she would have identified like I'm crying, I'm doing whatever.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, just at a very practical level, I did some financial calculations to see if to see, to
Right,
see what impact this would have.
right.
And was fine. I was like, I could do this. I'll be fine. Like I will be
Mhm,
fine. I'm young enough to bounce back from it. I don't want to stay
mhm,
in this longer than necessary because then more
mhm.
years will have passed. It'll get worse and worse. And so I was just like, we just probably need to. And it was a mutual decision. I mean, we're very we both knew what was going on. So it was a
Mhm.
mutual decision and it was amicable. It was like, hey, look, I respect you and
Yeah.
I don't want to keep like fighting. Like I can't
Mhm.
live life in a house where I'm arguing all the time. So
You and I were raised in an environment where, like, we were taught basically it was better to be dead than divorced,
yeah,
right? That
yeah,
under no circumstances were divorce an option, even if there was infidelity or whatever, they was like, you all just keep working it out. And I've seen the church do great damage
yeah,
to people and guilt people into staying in a marriage that number one they're not happy with, number two they've outgrown, number three it's horrible, and all the like. And nobody can understand, you know, why you, and it's nobody's business, but like if there's not infidelity there,
right.
like how come you all can't work it out,
Yeah,
right? That those weren't issues between my former wife and I, but it was like the partnership,
mhm,
the compatibility, the willing to be supportive of one another, like the basic tenets of what it is to be in somebody's life and be their partner were were non-existent between she and I.
mhm.
And I don't know, perhaps that's maybe more damaging than infidelity, because if you get married and there's infidelity, then you can point to one reason
Yeah,
why, okay, this is it. When it's not that case, or that's not the scenario, you can't just point to one thing. It's basically everything. Like,
it's
it's,
the
it
very foundation of it that's flawed to begin with, which
was not
makes
built
it
on anything
yeah,
stable,
yeah.
right? And I'm interested in how did you experience that, and then the aftermath of that, not with anybody else, just with yourself as a young Christian black woman who tried to do everything right, and now it's seemingly now you're not seemingly you're a single mother, or you're
Yeah.
parenting in very different ways, and all of that's broken. How did, like, what was your process like?
It's interesting that you mentioned that because that was a part of my calculation. I struggled with a huge sense of guilt for a while.
Sure.
Um because I was like, my marriage was supposed to work. You always think your marriage is supposed to work. And
Sure.
I don't want my daughter growing up like without her dad. And she hasn't had to. He's been phenomenal, right? But when you're initially going through it, like all of these thoughts run through your head. Like,
Mhm.
I why did my marriage work? Divorce is bad. Not to mention because I'm really big on privacy in the home. Nobody knew what was happening
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's family business. Like I don't care if you're arguing like cats and dogs behind closed doors. When you go out,
Yeah.
united front. So people were shocked. Like, wait a minute, what? You're getting what?
Yeah.
So
When, how, what happened?
wait, what Well, like I thought you had like the perfect relationship, and
Mhm.
I had to, of course, go to therapy afterwards
Mhm.
because it was tough navigating the guilt of it all and what it meant to be a divorced woman. You know, no, you're not. Never mind mentally healthy relationship. You should be in a relationship that contributes positively to your mental health, even if it doesn't. I don't advocate staying. I just don't.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was tough, Pat. It was tough. Like I went to like therapy after my divorce. Really took about a year, honestly, to do some self-reflection.
Mhm.
I think it helped that I like right after I got divorced, I started a new job. That was when I got my assistant principal role. So I had
Mhm.
like work to
Something to
sort of,
focus on, like something
yeah, a
yeah,
distraction.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
had a distraction. So
Well,
I wasn't able.
let's not call it a distraction.
Yeah, okay.
Let's look
Maybe
at
not.
it. Let's look at it and say you had something in your life to remind you that your whole life isn't this divorce,
Yeah.
right? That I have there's more to me than what I had to leave behind,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that was wonderful and great grace to have that in your life at that particular moment.
It was. It was because I was young too. I was still super young. So I was like
Mhm.
26, almost 27. So
Mhm.
it was, I like the way you described it. It was something that kept me from spiraling into like a depression that I probably would have been in had I not had
Mhm.
it to focus on and have to be present and show up.
Yeah.
So I would agree with you. Hmm.
So, therapy. You and I have been talking about therapy for a
A long time.
long, long, long time. It has been, I think, a lifesaver for me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would be a totally different person if I had not have um, embraced the responsibility that this is my mental and emotional health, and I
Yeah.
have to take responsibility for it, and I have to do it. How has that utility aided you? And let me add this too.
Yeah.
Part of a couple of things. Part of when I first got into therapy, number one, I didn't know how to be honest.
Yeah.
The church doesn't teach us how to be honest. It teaches us how to project whatever image we want people to see. But I didn't know how to be honest. And when we really started talking about things that happened and bothered me, I was rewriting the story in my head to protect people, you
Right.
know, in, in the history. And she was like, well, ain't no sense you keep coming if you don't. Like you're like you say this, but then this, or then she asked questions like, "How could these things be?" I was like, "What? Well, yeah, what? Well, you're right, you know." And I had to learn how. It's one of the things. Let me learn how to be honest. She had to teach me that, and she had a total disregard for my religion and
Hmm.
all of that stuff that came with it, right?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, this isn't working for you though. I get it.
Right.
Do you see the damage that this is doing? Like,
Right.
you know, and I had to be honest with myself about myself, that stuff. And then I had to be honest about the church
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um, some ways in which it was very damaging to me. And I had to begin to shed my religiosity as I understood it.
Yeah.
What was what was that like that process like for you as you started to kind of recover and reclaim your life?
Yeah. So like you, like therapy, and this is our running joke, right? Like we go to therapy to deal with people who don't go to therapy. We need to learn how to deal with people who don't
Right,
go to
yeah,
therapy.
right,
So, okay.
right. Yeah.
It's been a lifesaver for me. And
Mhm,
the biggest the biggest thing that helps me to grow is when people ask me the right questions, right? Because I will eventually come to the answer that I need to come to if I
mhm,
have the right questions. And
mhm,
so, what my therapists have done, like throughout the course of my history, whether it's post divorce or just routine therapy, is
mhm,
they've asked me questions that have forced me to think about why my lens is the way it is, because we all have a lens, right?
right,
Why my
right.
lens is the way it is, what factors are contributing to my lens being that way,
Mhm,
what behaviors I'm engaging in that are actually um, not beneficial to my
mhm,
developing relationships with friends and family and just work. And um, it's also helped me to not be the player on the stage, because that's a part of like church, but it's also a part like professionally of what I've had to do for so long, like being a school leader and being in such visible positions from the time that I was so young. So like you
Mhm.
go from church to the marriage to now you're responsible for teenagers looking at everything you're doing from the time you're 26, right? Like, and being under that microscope of what does it mean to be a school leader and have to live life publicly and privately, and sometimes there's dissonance around the two of those matching up
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
if you're a responsible school leader, there's certain things you just don't do. But then when that starts to bleed over into like my personal life, it's like, okay, they're like, hold on. They would ask me the questions to get me to reel that back in and make sure I
Right.
have a healthy separation and distinction.
Yeah.
So it's specifically helped me to sort of have a more evolved view of relationships and love. Like,
Mhm.
to every question that you've asked me today about how did you find out, how did you figure out how to love? Like, where'd you get your messages about love?
Mhm.
They've helped me to uncover some of those things,
Mhm.
particularly when it comes to my mom and just that dynamic between my mother and I. Like, I'm a lot like my mom. Um,
Mhm.
in both ways, right? Some good ways and some things that, like I said, I had to learn because from the lack thereof. So the lack of verbalizing that on a consistent
Mhm.
basis.
Mhm.
So I don't know where I would be. I don't think I would be this emotionally mature without
Mhm.
having gone to therapy, without consistently making sure I'm going to therapy. It also helps you recognize when people need to do some internal work and like
You can recognize it, right? Like,
it
mhm.
really does. Like you can recognize very clearly when there's some work that needs to happen.
Right. Like, oh, you should really sit down and talk to somebody about this. It's just.
You can kind of see it. You can kind of see it.
We do.
Uh,
Let me ask you this.
mhm.
Have you been in love since your divorce?
That's a great question.
I know I'm all in your business, right? I
Yeah,
know.
you are. You are. You know what? There's an interesting theory that you really only love like once or twice.
Hmm.
Like that I kind of believe that. Like you really only fall in love like once or twice. I
Okay.
have there was one other person
Hmm.
since my divorce that I can honestly say if I had to point to was I in love with this person? There's
Hmm.
one person.
Hmm.
Um, Clearly I've dated others, right? I was married
One or
when I was in
two
my
people.
20s,
Yeah. Huh.
43.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say there's one individual who saw me. I would say this person probably saw me in a way that nobody else saw me. And I mean, saw me, Beulah, and
Hmm.
everything that entails.
Hmm.
Um, Knew you ever had that type of love where you don't even necessarily have to say what's wrong, but people just know? And
Hmm.
they can speak to you in a way not even with you're not even having to verbalize what's wrong. Like they understand the core of what's wrong. They understand how something impacts you.
Hmm.
Um one time since then. Looking forward to falling in
What?
love, or growing in love again with my newfound definition. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was I've loved people since
Hmm.
then more than I've loved more than but
Hmm.
in love one time.
Were you in love with your former husband?
I was.
Hmm.
I was.
Hmm.
Um yeah, I really, really was. He my ex-husband, I think because he taught me so much, He taught me a lot. We taught each other. We taught each other lots of things. So, and I think that's why we have a healthy level of respect for each other even now.
Mhm.
Like he'll say nothing but positive things about me, and it's the same. I
Mhm.
grew with him in ways because again, I'm fresh out of college. I had this worldview of a specific worldview that was curated by church and ORU, and
Right.
he sort of taught me how to look at life through a different lens.
Mhm.
And I, and because I think ch- I grew so much, so part of my how I fall in love is like how can you contribute to my growth? Like what can you teach me? Like can you
Sure.
help to are you contributing to my spiritual emotional development? Right? That's
Yeah.
what love is.
No, yeah. Yeah.
The extent to which you can do that really is the extent to which I fall in love. And so he was able to change my worldview, I think, at a very good point in my life, at a very good time, because I was in my 20s.
Sure.
Mhm.
I think that as we get older, I think like so when you're younger, you have the energy to love somebody even if they're not giving you everything back,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
As you get older, you kind of begin to define love or find love in places that feed you,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like um if there's nothing for me to partake here, if I'm not, because we only, as we get older, we only got so much energy. I can't do everything. So
Right.
if you're gonna be in my life,
Right.
you have to be a place kind of where I come and you don't deplete me
Yep.
all the time, but you're giving me something that I can't find in anyone else, anywhere else, and you're giving me something. And part of what I think they give us is they give us part of ourselves back,
Yeah.
right? That I am being fed because when I'm with you, I am experiencing myself in a way, and you are unlocking a part of me in a way that I haven't found anywhere else. And that makes this precious.
Yeah.
And that makes me love it. That love makes me love the space that we create. We're in the room together. It makes me love how you think, the tone of your voice, all of those things. I think love is very different. You're one big impulse, and even if that's just in your heart when you're younger, when you get older, you start inspecting, like, oh, can you conjugate verbs? Number one, the requirements become different. Like, are you interesting at all? Like, do
Yeah.
you have,
Yeah.
any experiences? Like, I know, the women in my life, the women that I love dearly, are church women.
Hmm.
Love them. In my personal life, it's like, are you anything more?
Right.
I got that. We got it. That's
Right.
fine. Like, is there anything else about you
Right.
besides your Christianity and your religion that I find interesting about you? And so I think that as we get older and we look for partnership, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need you to partner with me mentally, emotionally, sexually, however we need. But this needs to also be a place where I get fed, and it's a space where you allow me to feed you.
Right.
Right? Like there's a mutual respect between each other where we're both being fed, and there's this byplay between us that makes us connect and draw closer um, to one another. That's rare,
It
right?
is rare. And Pat, one of the things that's I think made just my quest for love even more complex is that I do have very like authentic friendships with people, and I experience that in so many different ways, right? So like just like our friendship,
Mhm.
we have very good friendship. So I know anytime I talk to you, like it's going to be intellectually like thought provoking. Like I'm going to come away with something that makes me think, right? And
Mhm.
I can point to like other friends that I have where I know I'm going to get fed. There's going to be an exchange, right?
No,
That feeds the both of us.
right.
When you know what that's like at a very platonic sort of level of friendship,
Yeah.
you're like, well, why do I have to like, why would I settle if this is not feeding me? Like, why am I even here? Because and but it goes back to that question that you asked me, and I've been grappling with this for a while now since you asked me this question. Do you have to get everything from that one person, or do different relationships serve different purposes?
So okay, so this is a private question. This is a
Okay.
kind of conversation between Beulah and I. So let's
Yeah.
give some context to the question.
Yes.
Um, we were talking one day, and I said I'm wrestling and throwing around a theory that your partner, your husband, wife, doesn't have to be the only love in your life, right? That our lives perhaps theoretically are made up of a tapestry of loves, right? That this person, my friend feeds me in this way, my other friend feeds me in this way, my parents feed me in this way, my relationship with your child could feed you this way. And so since they feed me that, you don't have to be what they are, right?
Right.
So this is very on a simplistic level. And I don't know if this will work, but it's just simple. If I have a brilliant friend like Beulah or a couple of other friends who are very smart people. My question is, do I have to be partnered with somebody who is equally as smart? Or can I say you can be something else to me that I enjoy, that we bond, that we connect over, but you don't have to be that, right?
Right.
That if you need that type of intellectual stimulation and conversation, that may not be you, and that's fine. I had that already, right?
Right.
And so and so your answer to that was what?
Okay. So my answer to that was a question that my therapist asked me.
Mhm.
Um, and the question was like, when you are thinking about a relationship and you're thinking about values, like what you value in a person, you have to ask yourself the extent to which you need to be either closely aligned on that, or if it's not really that big of a deal. So, for example, I value intellectual curiosity. I value that. And if we're talking about on a scale of 0 to 100, I
Mhm.
need my partner to be at least at 80, 85 on that. Like that's
Mhm.
not something that, even though I have very smart friends and in terms of what I would like in a partner,
Right.
you have to at least be at like 85, right? On a scale of 100. You can't be at like 50% because that would become frustrating for me because I would get bored. I
Right.
would get frustrated.
Right.
Like I need to have a thought partner. I'm a communicator, right? That's
Mhm.
important to me. So I need somebody who's okay with having conversations. If it's not really that, there could be something else. Like I really like sports. It's cool if the person likes sports, but on my
Mhm.
scale of like,
Mhm.
that's not really that important because I can go to games by myself. I can
Right.
find a friend to go with. If
Right.
you don't like sports, it's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
So that's the
But
answer.
you can't live with stupid.
Well, say it again.
You can't live with stupid.
I cannot live with stupid.
Because that's what you're going to be here, right? And so if we can't talk or you're not interested in anything, I
Right.
can't live with that, right?
No, that's where I draw the line. I'm like, no, can't do stupid. That won't work.
So let's add this too, because you brought it up and I think is worth talking about. Our relationship has never been sexual.
No.
It has always been intimate.
Right.
It has always been platonic.
Right.
And I think that this whole idea of men and women can't be friends is dumb. That is so stupid
I
that if
agree.
you don't have, first of all, intimacy. When we say intimacy, we always default think sexuality, and that's not. You can be sexual with somebody and not be intimate at all. Like that's not. Those are not the same things. And you
Right.
could be tremendously intimate with somebody and it never be sexual. And I think that one of the things that has shaped me um, is knowing that I have someone in my life, a woman in my life that I can talk about some very personal, emotional, intellectual things and it not be misconstrued. And that in itself is a safe space for me, right?
Right.
I've experienced our friendship through the years, through all of the changes, ups and downs, and things that are happening. I know I can call you and you will respond and listen and help me reframe my understanding or cause me to think differently about it. And that is as intimate for me as anything I have ever experienced. And I'll push it, a step further. As a man, I have that relationship with another man,
Right.
right? I have a best friend, like, and if I need to talk about something horribly private and personal, I have that safe space with him, and that's not gay. That's not
Right. No.
not whatever
Right.
people would like to project it. It's friendship, it's relationship, it's intimacy, and if you don't have that outside of your partner, I think you are missing out on one of the beauties and graces of life itself.
Yeah. So thank you for saying that. It's not a very it's hard for people to wrap their brains around, particularly because typically when people see me, if they see me in a picture, I may be with a guy, right? I may very well, you and I have been in pictures,
Yeah.
and literally it's totally platonic. And I think it's hard for people in society to wrap their minds around, wait, you
Mhm.
have, because let's just say my brother is very attractive. You're very attractive. Nobody has to say that, you know that.
Well,
You come on, Pat. You know
I
that.
clean up okay.
You yeah, okay.
Well,
And you're tall, so you have tall privilege as well. So
I, I do have tall privilege.
you
I
got
do.
tall privilege.
And
But
the tallness is not about me. It's just that she could wear whatever heels she wants to wear and not be taller than me. So it's not about. That's not my utility. That's her utility. It's fine. I know better. I know better. Like it's not about. Look at me, but I could wear my heels. I don't have to wear flats. That's all that's about. It's not about. It's not about me. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know I think it's hard for people to wrap their minds around it, and I think people do themselves a disservice when they don't allow for it,
Mhm.
because there are times when I need the male perspective. I need the male energy. I think if we were thinking about like God, right? It's the perfect balance of feminine and masculine energy, right? Together. Both of those things.
Yeah.
And when you don't allow yourself to love somebody outside of just your partner, and this is just strictly a friend and it's platonic, I think you rob yourself of very meaningful relationships that can help you grow. I think
Absolutely.
we reduce everything, particularly in this day and age, to sex. We reduce it down to sex,
Yeah.
not even intimacy, to your point.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
because we reduce everything down to sex, if we see two people together and they're close, oh, they must be having sex. It's like, no,
That's the most silliest
no,
thing. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
juvenile to me. Like
It
I
is,
and I
yeah, yeah. And
and
I sometimes have to explain to people, like men who would like to be romantically in my life. Listen, I have very good close male friends who I've known for my entire life, practically. Like you can meet the person, like you can talk to the but like this person is not going anywhere. So like if that's
right.
problematic, I don't really know what to tell you.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like if I have, and I feel like this for a couple of my friends, that if I'm with somebody and they're intimidated and they want me to choose between my friends and having you in my life, that means I'm with the wrong person,
Right,
right? Because you don't understand that these people help me be better you, right?
right,
And if you see that as threatening and not as a benefit to you, then yeah, this isn't space for me to
Not
be.
gonna work, right? It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work.
We could do this because we talk, for a long time or
Right.
whatever. Before we go, because I have some questions I need to ask you before we go. But let me just touch on this because this has been a running conversation between me and you and I. Is that um, you are a high achieving woman, and I achieve, and we
Right.
both have people, friends in our lives who are high achieving, have advanced degrees in this, and we're all good students,
Yeah.
right? We get the classroom, and it's like a fish in water. Like we do this,
Right.
right? We do it on a high level,
Right.
but our relationships
Not so great.
doesn't translate over.
No, it doesn't.
Right, and we've had, well, why is that? And my conclusion is perhaps is that in a classroom, perhaps we could look at a syllabus or a rubric and say, okay, I know how to calculate success. I know what I need to do to invest myself to get myself to where I need to be. We control all the factors,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
about me, my performance, and I don't know. I make sure to do what I need to do. In relationships, it's much more a vulnerable and it's a very vulnerable environment
Mhm.
because all of it is not dependent upon my effort or how smart I am or how tall I am or how beautiful you are. It's dependent on other factors,
Right.
and we haven't been able to translate success in one area in our lives
Mhm.
to the other spaces in our lives and perhaps the most significant spaces in our life. Perhaps, I
Mhm.
don't know.
Mhm.
How have you dealt with that and found a way to have peace with the struggle to love, um, in
Yeah.
light of being so much a success in other spaces?
There's always this juxtaposition. Like, that's been a question again that I've explored in therapy. Like, I'm so good at this part. Why can't I get this part right? And it is, it is everything you just said, right? It's if you give me a target, you tell me, okay, this is your target for work, I can meet it because I understand inputs and outputs. And
Right.
and once you do something for so long, then automaticity kicks in and you can
Yeah.
really just in your
Yeah.
sleep kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Human beings are not widgets.
Mhm.
Um, Emotions, feelings, it
Mhm.
gets messy
Very
and
complicated.
it gets complicated.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm having to be okay with, because I wasn't really the complexity when things get difficult, like I've had a tendency to just be like, all right, I'm just done. This is too much. Because I'm used to being able to just
Yeah.
input,
Yeah.
output.
Yeah.
I'm still learning, honestly, how to be okay with the complexity of navigating relationships with men. I'm still learning how to do that. And the piece that I've gotten is that I am learning and it is okay, and I'm doing my work internally to make sure
Mhm.
I'm showing up as the best person I can possibly show up as.
Mhm.
My thing is I don't now more than somebody having whatever challenges they have, I don't mind the challenge. I'm probing for, are you doing your own work?
Yeah.
Right. So now it's the extent to which you're number one, self-aware. Do you know that you need to be doing work? And are you doing the work?
Yeah,
And
I've said this in my some of my relationships, and when they got serious, like I can't seriously consider being with someone if they're not doing that work for themselves. Like
right,
it's not like
right,
because if you don't take your mental and emotional well being seriously, how are you gonna take mine? You
right,
don't care about
right,
you. You
right.
gonna care about me.
Yeah. So that's been my evolution. Now, I don't run away from somebody having to do some work, but I exit stage left if you're not even aware.
Yeah.
And subsequently, if you're aware and you're just not doing anything about it, or you think somebody has an obligation to deal with whatever your stuff is, and you're
No,
not doing any work.
no, I'm not obligated to do anything.
No,
And
like
I don't, and I've been very sensitive. You know, it's like I don't want to get into a relationship and be somebody's therapist and be your pastor. Like
right.
those are specific roles. And if I get duty bound in that, then I can't enjoy you because then I'm gonna be like, well, this is
It's
work,
work.
and I
Right.
have to, and there's no way for me to enjoy being with you. And I look at you and I have to have the chore of helping you do your own work. And not that we don't aid each other,
Right.
but primarily that needs to be your responsibility and you have to have your own space. And then we both process our stuff together, right?
Yes.
But I just realized that if you don't have that, what we do is that we dump on the other person and
Hmm.
we use each other, you know,
Hmm.
it's kind of an emotional dumpster. And that gets heavy for everybody,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
very much so.
and then I'm not sure if we are designed to be that for each other. I know historically the role we play, but I'm not convinced of that anymore. So doing your own work and having that space in your life for me that's a non-negotiable. Like
Right.
I can't, no, nope.
But that's how I, to answer your question about how do you make peace with it. I think I had to move from not just shutting down when things were not
Mhm,
perfect or the X's and the Y's didn't add up and I couldn't
mhm,
really. So that was I was in that phase at one point where I was like, you know what, this is too complicated. Like I don't, yeah, no, I'm not. This is a lot. This is too much. To
mhm.
no, it's fine. We can work through it, but are you doing the work?
Right. I can handle it,
Yes.
but I'm not lifting this by myself,
No.
right? You're
No.
gonna have to pull up your end of it too, and I'll be a partner in it, right?
Right.
I don't expect love to be perfect. I
No.
don't expect it not to be complicated. I mean, it is what it is. But in order for us to be in it together, the weight of yourself, you're going to have to assume that responsibility and let me come alongside you and help you out. And I
Right.
expect the same. I expect the same thing. So, yeah, we're still working. We're still working
Yeah.
that out. I'm gonna have to let you go.
Okay.
This has been awesome. But before you go, I have 5 questions that I ask everybody who comes on. Rapid
Okay.
5 questions.
Okay.
Um, with you, I've changed the questions. No, I haven't changed them because of you. I've been changing the questions all along, and I think I've got them. And so you're the first person. So it's fine.
Okay.
You'll be fine. You're brave.
All
You
right. Okay.
first question. Um, do you believe in love at first sight?
No.
Okay. Um, what do you believe about love now that you didn't believe then?
Love is a series of decisions
Mhm.
that you make on a daily basis. Before I thought it was just a feeling.
Mhm. So
I'm
I asked you,
frozen.
you
Am I
got,
frozen? Okay, no, I'm
you
back.
got,
Okay.
I got you. Okay. I asked you, what did you believe about love? And you answered that question. Now I'm going to ask you, what do you know about love?
Hmm. What do I know about love? That if loved properly,
Mhm.
you will become the purest version of yourself that you've ever been. If loved properly.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. This
You're
is beautiful.
welcome.
Next question. What is a good lover to you?
Good lover. Someone who is in tune with me emotionally, spiritually, and mentally.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Last question. Where do you find joy?
Wow. In sunshine and oceans. That's where I find joy. Those are my happy spaces.
Yeah.
And then being just a good mom. When I can show up for my daughter, I find joy in that.
Well, that's it. Let me do this. I've decided to do this since I talk to friends on here. I thank you for being part of my life. I thank you for being a friend to me all of these years and always been supportive and always been a listening ear. You are someone I have grown to depend on and wouldn't want to, do this life thing without your friendship. So thank you. And I
Oh,
love you very much.
I love you too, Patrick. Ditto.
Yeah,
Feeling is mutual. We go way back.
way
So
back.
I appreciate that.
We're
I
still
love
here.
I
So
know. I love you too. I love you very much.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. So, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. Beulah, if they wanted to connect you or follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Facebook, all things Beulah Mcloyd, like my name in the corner there. So
Yeah,
Twitter, Beulah Mcloyd. I have a website,
of course you do.
beulahmcloyd.net, .net, and then on
Yeah.
Facebook, Beulah Mcloyd as well.
All right. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for
Thanks
hanging
for
out. Thank
having
you,
me.
everybody who hung out with us. And I see your questions, Nicole, and all of you all. Thank you all for chiming in and being with us. Be back next week for another great episode of Love Again podcast. I love you all. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you again next week. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.